just can't stop thinking about how I'm going to make this front end work, try and get in there and do some measurement, and I might just start cutting. G'day guys, welcome back to the Iron Empire. I'm Mark Arnold, and today we are doing something a little bit different. We are in the OG Iron Empire. For those of you who have been around the channel for a long time will recognize exactly where I'm standing. This is where all the action happened years ago. So I had a full video ready for you guys, but then we had a little bit of a hurdle right at the last step. So I couldn't put that out, and I thought last minute, let's come up with something new. Let's do a little bit of a look around a project I started literally 4 years ago. Actually longer than that, but I've had footage sitting of this car for 4 years now. I just looked through my files and seen that it was from 2021, which actually makes me feel a little bit sick that this has taken so bloody long. And it's just, life has just totally got in the way. I'll try not to move around too much. This is like leaves and shit everywhere in here. This is this is basically a compilation of all the stuff that I still have at my parents' house, along with another couple of cars out there. And anyway, what we're going to look at today is my 1966 Dodge Phoenix. Now, this was my old man's car. He had this thing since the late 90s. I have done a video on this car before, and I actually began doing some pretty extensive work on this car. This thing is a factory poly 318 car, 727 torque flight, big Chrysler diff. It is a big yank tank, but obviously built right here in Adelaide, South Australia. Literally the oldest car in the fleet by the oldest, not the oldest car in the fleet, but the longest in the fleet by far, because this is dating back to the 90s. And I got dropped off to school in this thing, primary school in fact. So the fact that it's sitting here looking like this is a bit sad, and maybe this is the kick up the arse I need to get this thing back on the road. Now we're going to go rewind 4 years right now into the archives of some footage that I have of this car when I started doing the front end. I started doing some airbags. Now I'm not sure what sense we're going to make of this, because I don't even remember what was recorded, and I can't even remember what I've done here. But let's take a look and see what I got up to 4 years ago. So here we are, filthy engine bay. Obviously the last I'd left this thing, I'd given the outside a quick hose off and it's looking a bit more respectable, but under the bonnet still disgusting. And what better time to start than right now? So here we are, gonna get stuck into it. First things first, I'm gonna blast this all out, give it all good hose down with the pressure cleaner. Then I'm gonna decide how far I'm gonna go at dismantling what's left of this engine bay. I don't want to take the front guards off, but there are some parts that have to come out so I can give this a proper paint job. So let's get stuck into it. So I've given it all a hose off, as you can see, and I'm pretty surprised. The actual engine bay's not that bad, like it's pretty clean. Obviously a little bit of grease and stuff around the steering components and front end, but aside from that, it's pretty sweet. I'm gonna do this up with all that in the car. At a later date, I might do the front end up. I can't actually remember how good or bad it is, so at that stage I might, if I ever pull it out to redo the front end, I'll detail that all then. But for now, it's just going to get a tidy out from the top and a re-black. The transmission has never, well, the trans didn't come out of the car when the motor came out for the rebuild, and the trans is fine. It probably could do with a service, but aside from that, that's all good. So that's staying in there. I'm getting the stall converter through Grant at Nord Automatics, who has been liaising with Dave Lee about what engine setup and all the running gear, diff gears and cam and all the specs on the engine, so he can properly match up the correct stall. So whatever he recommends is what I'll be going with. I should have that all sorted in the next couple of weeks, hopefully, and by then I should hopefully also have the engine bay painted. So I'm gonna let this set for 20 minutes or so, and then give it a blast, and then start tearing some stuff out. Next morning, I've had a bit of time to think about this, and the more I do, the more it makes total sense just to pull the whole front end off. Definitely not what I wanted to do. Always looking for the easy way out, but I think judge. I think that it's going to make the job obviously much bigger, and it's going to sort of make it a longer process in the long run, but I think it's going to make each individual job that I'm doing more enjoyable and obviously a way better outcome. So once all the front end's off, I'll be able to access the whole front end much better, like as in the chassis rails and that sort of stuff. So I'll get a better result there. I won't be hating life because I'm trying to get in all the nooks and crannies. So I'm gonna be right there. All the inner guards I'm gonna have up on a bench, up on a trestle, doing all the work on those. So that will be a much better outcome and more enjoyable. So I guess like in the long run, it's gonna be way better. So today I'd be really happy if I can get the front end of this car apart and then get these brakes down, and that's pretty much it for the day. So see how far we get. Once again, things have escalated. So obviously now the front end of this car is off. I'm looking at all the suspension and the chassis rails and how much room there is. I've always wanted to airbag this thing, and it was definitely not on the cards for now. I just wanted to get it in and running and driving. But I'm thinking that now while the guards are off, I'd be silly not to get the front end sorted. So now I'm looking at all the options of how to airbag the front. So I'm gonna start tinkering, getting it low right now, and then see what we've got to work with here. I don't know why I do this to myself. All right, so my GoPro ran out of batteries, but I just pulled out these bump stops. As you can see, they're ginormous. And I've also pulled out the things, torsion bar tensioners. So basically that's what adjusts the ride height on these things. That's why Mopars are so easy to lower. And so they're out. The only thing that's going to stop this thing from using its maximum travel is the shocks themselves. So I'm going to drop it down and see how far it will go with the shocks still installed, because they don't look overly large. They're a pretty short shocker anyway. And then, yeah, reassess if need be. Shocks will come out, and then we'll drop it again and see how far it goes. Alright, so pretty happy with how low the front end goes. It pretty much goes, the cross member comes within an inch of the ground, which I'm happy with. I want to leave myself a little bit of leeway for exhaust and just movement with front end stuff. I don't want to do any damage with this car, so I'm happy for it to sit there. The problem is trying to get something to fit the front end of this thing. Everything that I bag seems to be a one-off sort of thing. There's not anyone else out there that I've found that's done it with any information online. Phoenixes are rare enough in Australia anyway. So I'm trying to find stuff, Plymouth Furies in America, and I can't find anything. Found some photos, but no detailed shots. The problem with the front end of this, if you can see here, I've got a strut, I've got a shock here that goes up through a tube. This is the shocker mount. Obviously an airbag is not going to fit in there, that's far too small. So my first option was to open this right up and make a big hollow open with a nice big tube to put a bag like a strut style in, so I'd replace it. So you've got shock and air ride, the airbag all in one, which is the most compact, way more expensive. We're talking like $1,500 starting with, but there's just simply not the room in the front end to do this. As you can see, as big a car as it is, there's not a lot of room between here. So by the time I open it up, I'm only going to realistically have about 6 inches. Most of the bags are about 6.5 inches, and I need some clearance, so I'm up to 7 of what I need. So that's not really an option. My next option is going the old school way of the way I've done all my other cars except for the Fairlane over there. The Doom Sled and also the Datsun, pretty much cutting out the spring perch and making a new bag bracket, which means pretty much right here where that big lump of steel is that holds the bump stop on, I pretty much have to cut all that out, and hopefully I'm thinking there might be enough room between the shock and the kingpin here, or the spindle, whatever you want to call that. Next option is to remove the shock altogether and then relocate that somewhere else, which will give me even more room, but I'm just trying to leave it as usable as possible, so I basically reduce the amount of work, but that equals a very tricky task. So basically I'm just been researching for hours today and measuring and looking, and yeah, today's been very unproductive, unfortunately, but at least the front end's off. I'm going to continue tinkering around under here, maybe pull the wheel off and try and get in there and do some measurement, and I might just start cutting, see what happens. Alright guys, so it's the next night and I've had a massive day at work. I'm not really super motivated about this right now, but I just can't stop thinking about how I'm going to make this front end work. It's just so much more complicated than any other cars that I've done before, just with the design. I mean, the fact that the shock goes straight through the middle of the chassis rail, and then so you've got the shock buried deep in there, which is allowing between the spindle here and the shock is probably about 160 mil. So I'm probably going to be pushing it to fit an airbag in there. So if I was to move it any further backwards, I'm going to be taking out where the shock is. So the shock's going to have to be relocated. Then I'm running into issues with where the shock's going to go. If I put the shock down here, I've got this rod here which stabilizes the lower control arm, and there's a sway bar, and then at the back here I've got steering. For such a big car, it is so tight in this front end, so I'm not sure if I'm going to get any more recording done tonight, but what I'm going to do is just maybe pull a wheel off and knock off the top control arm and maybe just do a bunch of measuring, and then we'll be back on the camera maybe later in the week once I actually got some daylight, and we can go over, and I've got a bit of a plan, so wish me luck. Alright, so I'm back on my phone now. My GoPro's gone flat. They go flat really, really easily for some reason. But anyway, I got my bag all mocked up here, and I'm gonna drop it down on the low control arm. That's pretty much where it's gonna sit, more or less. Just up there, riding on that edge. I'll tack this in place now, and then lower the car down, press the bag, and then assess what's good and what's not. Alright, so bottom bag bracket's all mocked up. I've got that tacked in place here. got it tacked on all four corners, and I've got the bag in place and the bag zip tied, sort of compressed, not completely compressed. Inside this chassis rail, I'm planning on putting, I'll drop it down so you guys can see it properly, but I want to put a bit of angle in there. This is like 3mm angle, and I'm going to weld this in throughout the back of the chassis rail to like back brace it. I'll show you now. Through this whole back section, I'm going to put this in here, weld that in place, so that will be lap welded up here and be like a backbone for the top of this, and then the angle will be sitting down, which will pretty much create a chassis rail inside there. And then once I've got my bag bracket in place, then I can box it all in and gust it all up, and it should be plenty strong enough. So this will pretty much be the last sort of mock-up update that I do before I just go to town and weld this thing completely in. I wouldn't want to go any further than this before double checking everything. You can see now that the bag mount is all welded in. It's probably hard to see back in there, but I've got a big thick heavy duty weld there, and then my chassis filler panel is tucked in behind the bag there. You can see I've tacked it in place only, and then going around underneath, you can just see that panel swinging around following the line of the bag, and you can see that there's plenty of clearance there. Going to the back side, same thing. You can see that panel swinging around behind the bag, plenty of clearance all the way around. It's very hard to sort of capture all this on film, but I've got clearance of at least 1/2 inch the whole way around the bag, so I'm super happy with that. Nothing else pretty much can touch the bag from here on in, so it's just a matter of filling in all the gaps, laying some nice heavy duty welds, cleaning them up a bit, and then this side's pretty much done, aside from shock towers. So I've got to put in a custom relocation of the shock, but we'll get back onto that another day once I've got the front end going up and down. So as you'll see, I undertook some pretty serious fabrication work under the front there. We're only halfway done, and it's probably a mistake that I started that. Let's be fair, because if I hadn't have done that, we could have just pieced this car back together, put the motor in it, and actually got this thing back on the road. But now that I'm that far into it, I just got to keep pushing forward. I've got to grind through this project and get it to a point where it is basically reaches the vision that I had for this car. 4-door 60s sled, just bagged on the ground with like over 500 horsepower sitting on the bonnet. That's right, I've got a 440 big block built by Dave Lee at Dave Lee Race Engines. This thing has been sitting for like 5 years on its own, or maybe not 5 years, it's sitting for years in the shed, built, literally ready to turn key and go. And this is the car that it's going in. So absolute waste sitting here right now, guys. So anyway, maybe I shouldn't have shown you this, because oh man, there's a big project, but fuck, this one is a special one, really special. All right, so over here in the back here, I can't even get to it, it's so buried. This is a bunch of parts that I basically accumulated different projects. So we've got like interiors for Falcons. We got multiple Harley seats left over from old builds. Even buried here, I have a full metal body for a Model A 1928 Roadster, and it's sitting there waiting its turn. I had my idea, I wanted to build a hot rod, and Maybe I'll get there one day. Maybe someone will buy the project off me, but there is parts galore. Honeycomb grills, spindles, drag slicks, there's all sorts. But this one here, this is a big project, and yeah. All right, guys, now I've got to wrap this thing up. As you can tell, this was totally on the fly, very unprepared and very average, let's be honest. But what I wanted to show you before we wrap this one up is that I am really excited, super excited, because today was going to be a big day. I was picking up brand new merch, the first time in probably 6 months. So as you'll probably see, I have a brand new pocket print logo, Iron Empire, the lightning bolt, and on the back we have the Iron Empire, established 2019, and yeah, if you want to support the channel, jump on, grab one of these tees. These are printed on AS color. I'm really fussy with my t-shirts, and I finally got a nice tee that I like the fit of. These quality prints, printed right here in Adelaide, and yeah, you can support the channel. Jump onto the Iron Empire store. I will link the description below, or I'll have it right here on the screen, www.theironempire.com.au. And yeah, that's going to be it for this time around. So if you haven't already, like the video, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we will see you next week for an upcoming episode of The Iron Empire. Cheers, guys.